Just a real quick tip. Don't confuse narcissistic abuse with narcissist. So I've been so excited about the information shared on social media about narcissistic abuse and toxic relationships, and the needed awareness and discussions happening instead of the isolation that so many suffered in the past. But also, I'm worried about so many of you just because of how the information is being shared, and now it looks like how it's being used because of that. So it's important to remember three things, right? First, these short snippets of statements of fact highlighting one trait, behavior, or characteristic associated with any diagnosis is not as straightforward as it seems or as we would like it to be. It takes information about one's biological, psychological, and social history and present situation, along with diagnostic considerations and even testing to determine a diagnosis, especially one for a personality disorder. It's also important to keep in mind that if you decide a diagnosis for yourself or others, you're going to see information to support your suspicion simply because you're human. And we suffer this thing called confirmation bias, right? So as human beings, we see what we expect to see and throw out what doesn't agree with what we expect to see, oftentimes without even realizing it. It's also, finally, important to consider that treating someone as if they have a diagnosis based on one or two traits that are relatable from social media memes or videos that tell you if this thing happens, then you're dealing with this diagnosis, like a narcissist. That can create a bigger problem if those media sources steered you wrong or down a rabbit hole with confirmation bias, blah, 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 blah. So I want you to know that narcissistic abuse occurs across so many different situations, not just from someone who is diagnosable as having narcissistic personality disorder. The behaviors associated with narcissistic abuse aren't always handled the same way in all situations. So for example, treating someone you love as if they have narcissistic personality disorder or they are a narcissist because you decided after seeing these memes and stuff that they were gaslighting or blame shifting or rug sweeping may lead to unnecessary detachment and overlook opportunities to connect in ways that will improve your relationship. It recently came to my attention that people suffering from betrayal trauma are now commonly viewed as being narcissistic. And the truth is, they're experiencing CPTSD, which is similar to the characteristics associated with borderline personality disorder, right? Which makes sense because borderline personality disorder is rooted in extreme fears of rejection, right? And I'm not going to get down that whole thing. They didn't just get borderline personality disorder. It's something you don't just get from a situation. So for the people who suffer CPTSD, they're in dire need of validation for their emotions and the way that they were hurt. They're also reeling from rejection, which means they're a victim to the mental gymnastics in their brain, right, which is wired for survival, to consider every possible way that they might be being manipulated. So challenging their thoughts is important too, right? So you validate the feeling, and if it is appropriate to do so, challenge their thoughts. However, if you end up reading up on how to engage with a narcissist, you're going to take away the very thing they and your relationship needs to heal. Right? Narcissists view every interaction with another human being as if that person is taking power from them or giving power to them. Therefore, it's important to avoid emotional intimacy like sharing your thought processes or talking about your feelings as if they are wanting to understand you, right? They're committed to gathering evidence they might be able to use later in order to harm you. You're just giving them emotional ammo. So if you're working through CPTSD or betrayal trauma and you interpret their behavior as narcissistic instead of trauma-based, then you're going to treat them as if they're seeking power over you instead of chaotically and emotionally dysregulatedly, we'll make that word up because you know what I meant, right? Attempting to get their need for connection met in a situation they were blindsided by finding out wasn't emotionally safe for them and was supposed to be their emotionally safest place. So in order to avoid pitfalls in connecting with others, with your loved ones, with your spouses, with yourself, be sure to find a professional to help you gain insight, consider the situation, and explore ways of gaining self-awareness and connecting, especially in these situations, before deciding that disconnection is necessary for your mental health or healing process. And if you're comfortable doing so, because I know you guys are out there, please feel free to comment and share the situations in which you were maybe steered the wrong way if it was from a professional, because that happens too. Finding the right one can be very difficult. Or it happened to be some stuff you came across on social media, or you were in a support group and in the interest of helping somebody engaged in projection or transference and it sent you down the wrong rabbit hole. Please share your stories, because it's important that we keep connecting over the things we share, but that we also do so with caution for the pitfalls that steer us wrong.